When it comes to the show Titans, I find it to be a tale of two cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The show adapts moments from the comics that I never thought I'd get to see in live action, but they don't always stick the landing. It showcases heroes and villains that are very often overlooked and underloved, but their depictions of major names is always lacking. There's just as much to love here as there is to hate. And I don't know if any story beat, any character arc, any character symbolizes that more than the show's second Robin, Jason Todd. The part was played by Curran Walters, and he really understood the assignment. At least he did at first, giving his all to each and every scene. On Titans, Jason is beyond cocky. He's overly confident and self-assured even when it's not warranted. Maybe especially when it's not warranted. He's a reckless rebel without a cause looking for a fight. He's chaos incarnate, anarchy for the sake of anarchy. He's rough around the edges, and he's got a chip on his shoulder. Now, some of this is brought on by immaturity. He wields great power, but responsibility is kind of a foreign concept to him. He very intentionally abuses the privileges that come with being the boy wonder. He's a good guy, but he's not a very good guy. Though I wouldn't call him villainous, per se. He operates in morally gray-shaded areas, maybe more so than anybody else on the show. He's a lost soul who's lost his way, and I don't think he's necessarily trying to find his way back. Mentors and teachers come and go, trying to guide him down the right path, but he's far too busy dancing to the beat of his own drum. He's given all these gifts, the name, the mantle, the training, and yet he chooses to do his own thing with them. He's a kid who's lived his life on the streets, but still didn't gain any street smarts. Being completely blinded by his need to prove himself that he constantly puts himself and others in danger. He's an immature, impulsive problem child. By which I mean this child is a problem for all those around him. Those against him, those with him, those that know him, those that know of him. He's had a rough upbringing, and because of that, he's more than a little rough around the edges. It's easy to understand him, but it's hard to love him. Once again, he's not a bad person, but he's going down a bad path, despite the intervention from both Batman and the prior Robin. And as I'm sitting here trying to describe the character from the series, I realize that I'm really just describing the character from the comics to a T. And I think that actually speaks volumes about this particular portrayal and just how good of a job was done adapting this character. There are some things that are changed about the character, but characterization is definitely not one of them. Maybe his look is a little bit more modernized, but that's really about it. He's still very much the sidekick from the panels. However, things take a turn for the worst in terms of quality when the time came to transition the character away from his Robin roots and into his Red Hood fame. Or in this case, infamy. You see, like in the comics, this Jason meets his demise at the hands of the Joker, though here it happens a little bit differently. And for me, this was always going to be a mistake. There were several reasons why this was never going to work out, and not so much as one to suggest that it might. Storyline-wise, the narrative serves no purpose. Not only does it worsen arguably one of the best characters on the show, but this iconic storyline holds no actual weight on the show that it's a part of. First and foremost, here, Jason's death and rebirth only happens a few episodes apart. Viewers didn't even get time to mourn the character before they were asked to welcome him back. Now contrast that to the comics, where Jason died and stayed dead for 17 years, and readers thought they'd never see the character return. I mean, granted, it's obviously not the same. When Jason was first killed, there were no plans on reviving him. That came much later, and the show's adapting that arc as if it were always a creative, canonical plan. It's not the same, and it never could be. But they could have made more of an attempt. Give viewers a season or two without this character. I mean, it's not like they had a season or two left, but they didn't know that. The story's shock factor is also a moot point, because it was an outcome that everyone foresaw coming. Something that had been predicted pretty much since the actor was cast. This is the character's most famous story arc. So not only does everybody know it, but everybody was also expecting the show to do it. Therefore, it was no real surprise when it did happen. The show also makes the odd decision to eliminate both Batman and the Joker from the story, which are the two most important characters to Under the Red Hood, not named the Red Hood. In the comics, Jason blames both his father figure and his greatest foe for his death, and because of that, when he's reborn, he takes his revenge out on the two. Granted, there is some merit to changing things up here. After all, in this continuity, Bruce was a reoccurring background character for the convenience of the story, and the Joker was more of a plot point than anything else, as the character's actually not ever really shown. But to trade out the Joker with the Scarecrow for being at fault, and trading out Nightwing instead of Batman to be the target of Jason's resentment, really only muddled the original story. In Titans, the reason Jason mindlessly met up with the Joker is because the Scarecrow took his fear away. And that is a completely unneeded and unnecessary story beat that's only around to shift the blame back to another character. In the comics, Robin confronted the Joker because of all the reasons I previously listed. Being impulsive, being immature, being impatient. He didn't need the Scarecrow's toxin, because quite frankly, Jason Todd has always lived his life dangerously without fear. I think adding Scarecrow into the mix really confuses the narrative. It also does the really stupid thing of making Jason a victim of the toxin rather than a victim of himself. I always thought there was something so poetically tragic in Jason's story. He's actually responsible for a lot of what's happened to him in life, and he can't fully accept that. So he lashes out and he takes it out on others he can blame for the life that he's led. Now, there are legitimate other parties that are at fault for his own actions. And I'm sorry, but that's just not as compelling of a story for me. While the Joker, and even Batman, and in this specific case, Nightwing and Scarecrow all have a part to play and blame to share, Jason is also somewhat responsible for his own circumstances. I've made mention before that Batman is a protector and not a punisher. Well, the exact opposite could be said for Jason Todd. If he didn't think that he knew better than everyone else, if he wasn't so gung-ho about smirking in the face of danger instead of rescuing the victims that they leave in their wake, maybe he wouldn't have met the fate that he did. And deep down, he knows this. It's something that he wrestles with internally. But he numbs and blinds himself to that rough reality and shifts the blame to those around him, simply because it's less painful. His anger is amplified by his secret self-loathing masked by resentment for his peers.
Ooh, that sounded pretentious too.
The more responsible Jason is for his circumstances, the more he has to wrestle with. It's a difference between making him a victim and making him a victim of himself. And that's a much more interesting story beat that challenges the character, and even paves the way for the character's inevitable redemption arc. This sees him grow as a hero and as a person, but even more importantly than the narrative, from a characterization standpoint, this is a terrible Red Hood for all the same reasons this very same performance made him a perfect Robin. In the comics, Jason died a boy, but he was brought back a man. In this, Jason dies a boy and comes back as an angrier boy. He was pretty much just the same character now in a different costume. And sure, yes, in the comics, there are definitely traces of the boy he once was and the man he's become, but those traits are evolved. He was definitely still immature, but he was filled with rage and unhinged unpredictability. He wasn't angry, annoying, and angsty. You just don't ever feel like this Red Hood is a threat. He feels like a kid in a costume. A very angry kid in a costume, but a kid in a costume nonetheless. He's less total badass and more school shooter who missed his opportunity. And also, the costume, not helping matters. It looks like something that you'd see at Comic-Con. And I'm not talking about the type of costume that you would stop to take pictures of. This is a low-quality costume for a low-quality version of the Vigilante. The performance is really rough because I want to like the actor in the part. I mean, technically I have before, but he's just not really equipped at this stage of his life to play that version of this character. Truth of the matter is, somehow he was both the best and worst Jason Todd. The same qualities that made him such an awesome Robin were actually the ones that made him such an awful Red Hood. He played the part of the second Robin to perfection, but he did a disservice to Red Hood. Not that it was his fault. The issue wasn't with the actor, the issue was with the creative. Conceptually, this was a failure, so in execution, it stood no chance. He was the right guy in the right role at the wrong time. Anyway, that's my time. And that was both the best and worst Robin all in one, a man who deserves both his fame and infamy. So if you like this video and would maybe want to see more videos on the show Titans, I think this is actually surprisingly my first one, was planning on maybe doing a season-by-season breakdown series retrospective. If you want to see that, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying, "We are the Titans!
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out."
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time, same bat channel.